Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy, and today we're going to talk about a number of headlines, both directly and indirectly related to Bible prophecy. So let's dive right in. This first article today is from Zero Hedge. It's titled Erdogan Eager to Act on Putin's Offer to Make Turkey a Gas Hub. So here we have Russia and Turkey, two of the key members outlined in the Ezekiel 38-39 Gog of Magog Alliance. So this says, there will be no waiting, Turkish President Erdogan said Friday in his first official statement on the Russian proposal for Turkey becoming a Russian gas hub for Europe. Both leaders attended and met at a regional summit in Kazakhstan, where and Kazakhstan is another member of the Gog of Magog Alliance, by the way, where Putin floated a plan for exporting more gas, which has been blocked through main European hubs due to the Ukraine invasion, and also mystery sabotage attacks on the Nord Stream pipelines through the Turk Stream pipeline, which runs under the Black Sea. Both said they are now quickly moving forward, laying the groundwork for technical plans. Together with Mr. Putin, we have instructed our Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources and the relevant institution on the Russian side to work together, Erdogan said following the meeting with Putin. Separate follow-up comments by Turkey's foreign minister indicated that Turkey sees itself in a position to alleviate Europe's energy crisis. Also, at a moment, it is putting itself forward as a reliable, neutral mediator toward ending the war in Ukraine. Now remember, Turkey is a member of NATO. NATO seems to be mostly in line against Russia's actions in Ukraine, with the exception of Turkey. So from the get-go, we've said one of the key objectives of Russia's move into Ukraine may have been to peel Turkey off of this alliance because Putin wants to destroy NATO. So here we have Turkey sort of they're a neutral mediator, right? And they're going into business essentially with Russia to become a key player in providing the rest of Europe with natural gas. At least that's their hope. It says, as for Europe, leaders are likely only to see this as another ploy by Moscow to sow division among NATO, as well as EU countries in their united stance against Russia. And as they struggle to, well, they aren't united, because again, Turkey is a member of NATO, and they aren't united against Russia. And as they struggle to agree on punitive energy measures against Moscow, yet in a way that doesn't blow back worse on European populations and the economy, or it doesn't blow back worse on, I almost said European politicians, because that's what they're afraid of the blowback being on. I don't understand how they plan to institute punitive energy measures against Russia when Russia is the one supplying them with the energy. This makes no sense, but again, they're afraid. The politicians are afraid of the blowback. Since by saying Turkey and even entertaining the new Putin proposal and now signaling it's moving forward with studying it, has throughout the Ukraine conflict proven itself to be an outlier when it comes to its Western allies' united, strong stance against Russia. So what does all this mean? Well, this means if this comes into being as they envision it, that Turkey will be a key supplier of European natural gas, essentially through Russia. This allows the politicians to use Turkey as a conduit to pass the Russian natural gas through Turkey into Europe and claim it's coming from Turkey, right? We're not getting natural gas from Russia. We're getting it from Turkey. Everything's great. We're not hypocritical in any way. So this is a big deal this is a deal for Russia. This is a deal for Turkey. The European politicians can try to save face by saying they're not buying Russian natural gas, and it enriches Russia and Turkey at the same time and gives them both immense power over most of Europe. So again, we've seen Russia working with Iran, another key player of the Gog of Magog Alliance, to try to create an OPEC of natural gas. They want to dominate the world natural gas market. But another potential problem they could face is, what if another player comes into being that can supply natural gas and mess up this arrangement? And that's what we're also seeing. We have this article from Newsweek. It says Israel strikes major deal to bolster Europe's oil and gas supplies. Israel and Lebanon have agreed to a draft deal to end a decades-long dispute over the control of an eastern stretch of the Mediterranean Sea. Leaders from the two countries, which have no direct official relations, expressed hope that there can be ratification of the deal, which settles their exclusive economic zones and demarcates where each country has the sole right to extract resources. The disputed area includes the Karish oil and gas field and a region known as the Kana Prospect. Israel has said it would start extracting oil and gas from Karish and export it to Europe. And it says, U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein, who helped broker the deal, said it could take several years before the gas can reach European consumers, but added that it sends a very important message to Russia. The New York Times reported as Moscow has used energy supplies to put pressure on Europe. So think about that for a second. In Ezekiel 38:39, we see this Gog of Magog Alliance. It involves Russia, Turkey, Iran, and a number of other players. And the motivation, we're told, is to take plunder when they invade Israel from the north. So if, because this says this may take several years for Israel to be able to supply this natural gas to Europe. If in the meantime Turkey and Russia are able to broker a deal to supply that natural gas, they might be quite upset when Israel is able to bypass and rid them of that leverage that they would have by supplying their own natural gas to Europe. So is this a potential, are we seeing the final pieces coming into place for this? And as we read on through this article, it says Israeli Prime Minister Lapid said it was a historic achievement that will strengthen Israel's security, inject billions into Israel's economy, and ensure the stability of our northern border. I want you to think about that statement for a second, because again, Ezekiel 38:39 tells us the Gog of Magog Alliance will invade from the north. And right now, on Israel's northern border, through the war in Syria, the ongoing conflict for the past decade in Syria, we have members of the military and armed forces of Russia, Iran, and Turkey, three of the key members of the Gog of Magog Alliance. And here we see Israel openly talking about, well, this is going to ensure the stability of our northern border. It will strengthen Israel's security. And Ezekiel 38:39 paints a picture of an Israel that is surprised by the Gog of Magog attack. A land of unwalled villages, which some interpret not as necessarily there are no walls, but that they are in a place where they feel that their security is strengthened, their security is ensured. And that's exactly what the Prime Minister is saying here. So we may very well be seeing all of these pieces of the puzzle finally coming together for the Gog of Magog Alliance and the Gog of Magog invasion. Does that mean it's going to happen tomorrow? No, it doesn't mean that. It could. But we're seeing more and more of these pieces come together. It's almost on a daily basis we're getting stories related to Ezekiel 38:39. So on to our next story. This says Saudi Arabia expresses desire to join BRICS family. So the South African president has confirmed that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has expressed a desire to join the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, known as the BRICS, family. The president concluded his state visit to the kingdom, confident that both countries have cemented their continued bilateral cooperation and consolidated their strategic partnership. The state visit to Saudi Arabia was about advancing diplomatic and political relations between our two countries, but it is the economic relations that underpinned the substance of our visit. So here the president, he's talking about, really this is an economic alliance. He goes on to say the BRICS nations are going to be meeting in a summit next year under the chairship of South Africa, and the matter is going to be under consideration. Already a number of countries or nations have been making approaches to the other member countries, and we've given them the same answer to say it'll be discussed by the BRICS partners themselves, 5 of them, and thereafter a decision will be made, he said. So why is this important? This is extremely important from a global economic standpoint, and particularly in regard to our global monetary system, chiefly because in the 1970s, so 1971, Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard once and for all. He closed the gold window. Gold dollars were no longer convertible into gold by foreign nations. This meant that the dollar essentially was worthless. It was just a paper promise. So in order to prevent hyperinflation of the US dollar, the United States brokered a deal with Saudi Arabia where they agreed to defend the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, ensure their security, in exchange for Saudi Arabia trading oil exclusively in US dollars. This forced the rest of the world, it forced the oil trade to be conducted in US dollars. And oil, energy, is the backbone of the global economy. So this forced the nations of the world to use the US dollar and propped it up, kept it from going into a hyperinflation mode. Now we're seeing all of this change. So when the United States abandoned Afghanistan last year, Saudi Arabia saw what happened, and they saw, we can't count on the United States as a partner. The very next day, they signed a defense agreement with Russia, which largely went unreported in the mainstream news. Now we're seeing, yet again, this movement of Saudi Arabia into the BRICS sphere, this Russia, India, China alliance that is counter to the Western alliance of the United States, Japan, Europe, the UK, Australia, Canada, etc. So the Western world, we'll call it, and then the BRICS nations. The BRICS nations have said they would like to create a currency backed by commodities, and these countries are rich in commodities, agricultural commodities, industrial metals, precious metals, oil, natural gas. So if they could create a currency that is convertible into something real, that has stability, it would essentially destroy the Western financial fiat monetary system because it would become worthless. Countries like Saudi Arabia would say, we don't want US dollars anymore. We want something real. We want gold, or we want corn, we want soybeans, whatever it is that they want. And the United States and other Western nations would no longer be able to just print in exchange for oil. So this has huge implications. We'll see how this goes, but this could lead to really hyperinflation in the United States and the Western world in the years ahead. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but this is, I believe, the Achilles heel of the United States and the Western financial system, and I believe it is the reason that Putin ultimately invaded Ukraine, was to undermine this system. And we've been over that in previous videos. We don't have enough time to go over all the reasons why that is in this one. But if the United States loses the dollar reserve status, then what do they have left? They have this piece of paper fiat currency. They will be forced to live within their means, which probably doesn't include 100 overseas bases for their military. This is a very important development, so we'll keep an eye on that. On to our next story. This is from Wall Street Silver. It says, "What is this even supposed to mean? I am genuinely confused." And they had this, I guess, an airport advertisement. It says, "Right now, your money might be fueling the climate crisis. What happens next is up to you." And this is courtesy of Bank Australia. So, no need to be genuinely confused. This article is from August. This was in CNBC. It says, "Australian bank to scrap loans for new diesel and gasoline cars as country looks to increase electric vehicle uptake." It says, "An Australian bank plans to stop giving loans for new diesel and gasoline cars as the country tries to encourage the use of electric vehicles and catch up with other developed countries. In a statement Friday, Bank Australia said it would scrap loans for new fossil fuel vehicles starting in 2025. Sasha Corville, its chief impact officer, like that title, said that that date has been picked because the change to electric vehicles needs to happen quickly. So, in other words, that date's been picked because we just made it up. We want it to be then. We want it to be, so we're just going to demand it be. We're going to make it happen. The bank, he added, believed this could happen with the right supporting policies in place to bring a greater range of more affordable electric vehicles to Australia. While there will be no more loans for new combustion engine vehicles, including hybrids, starting in 2025, Bank Australia will continue to provide them for used ones. We'll continue to offer loans for second-hand fossil fuel vehicles until there is a viable and thriving market for electric vehicles." So there's your answer as to why that advertisement is there. It's basically part of this system that we're seeing rolled out, this merger of state and corporate power to change, if not by nudging, by outright forcing and coercing the change of your behavior. They don't like your behavior, you're not buying the right vehicle. We've told you that this is the correct vehicle to buy, and you just won't listen to us, so we're going to force you into the system. So we're seeing this happen a lot with financial institutions. We've seen things like JP Morgan cutting off members of the Trump administration. I think it was General Flynn got his credit card canceled by JP Morgan because, well, we don't like that ideology. Then when there was a big uproar, they reinstituted it, but I'm sure probably at some point they'll drop him again. Then we've seen the Canadian trucker protest where banks colluded with the government to shut people off to access from their funds because the government did not like what they were doing, even though there was nothing unlawful about it. Then we see PayPal recently. PayPal, we're going to fine you $2,500 if you purvey misinformation, whatever that may mean. Well, it's up to them what it means. So anything you say they don't like, they'll be able to fine you for. Then they backtrack on that when all these people close their accounts. But keep in mind, some people were saying, well, I'm going to close my PayPal account. I'm going over to Venmo. Well, Venmo is owned by PayPal. So this is all part of their plan to go one by one through all these corporate institutions and bring them into line. They're going to coerce those institutions, just like they're trying to coerce us, into compliance so that they can create a ringed system, a cage that no one can escape from. This is all part of the setup for the Mark of the Beast system. It's not the Mark of the Beast, but it is creating the conditions and it is creating the platform that will lead to a system where if the government does not like what you are doing, they can simply cut you off from all buying and selling. Now think about that. Half of every transaction that takes place involves some sort of currency. Once the government controls that currency, which is where we're headed with central bank digital currencies, then that means they control 1/2 of every economic transaction, which means they control all economic transactions, and they can simply cut you off if you're doing what they don't like. So that's what this is all about with Bank Australia, and it's what's happening with a lot of corporations all around the world. Next, we had this story, which was a bit not surprising, but disturbing nonetheless. It says, and I don't know what this has to do necessarily with Bible prophecy per se. It may have something down the road to do with it in this technology, but I just think that it's a sign of the times in which we're in. It says, fake Joe Rogan interviews the ghost of Steve Jobs in an artificial intelligence engineered podcast. The latest development in using technology to bring back interactive AI versions of dead people has resulted in a fictional podcast featuring Joe Rogan and the late Steve Jobs. Play.ht, a voice synthesis company based in Dubai, has published a fictional podcast where an AI version of comedian and podcast host Joe Rogan interviews Apple's founder Steve Jobs. The podcast uses realistic voices digitally cloned from both men and is the first episode in a series called Podcast.ai, a weekly podcast entirely generated by artificial intelligence. Play.ht is an AI-powered text-to-voice generation tool that enables users to instantly convert text into natural-sounding speech. Now, think about, a lot of people look at this, the novelty of what can be created here, but think of the possible abuse that this could be used for, or really blurring the lines between reality and fantasy with something like this. Think of how this could be misused in political campaigns. You could create fake, counterfeit conversations between, say, a political candidate and somebody else, drop it a day or two before the election, and before anybody has time to dispute it and prove it as the fake it is, it's totally transformed an election. Or think about in a criminal trial. You could create fake conversations that implicate somebody in a crime that they never committed based on creating a fake voice that sounds just like theirs and has all of the earmarks and the telltale signs of their own voice, which is like a fingerprint. So this is very dangerous territory that we're going into. Again, some may see this as a novelty. I believe this is very dangerous. There's probably even ways that it's dangerous that we haven't even thought of yet. So this is another area I believe it's just a general sign of the times in which we're living. Now, this last article, this is about Thanksgiving. Next month, we'll approach the U.S. celebration of Thanksgiving. I know not everybody in the world celebrates Thanksgiving the way the U.S. does or at all, but I thought that this was very relevant based on food shortages and food inflation that we're seeing, which is a worldwide problem. And this gives us a glimpse into what's happening in the United States. It says 1 in 4 Americans plan to skip Thanksgiving as inflation hits the holidays, according to Personal Capital Research. Now, in the United States, Thanksgiving is a holiday where people get together en masse. I mean, it's almost universal. It's pretty close to it as you'll get in modern day society. And people generally have multiple people over their houses. So to skip Thanksgiving at a 1 in 4 rate, I believe is very high. Maybe the survey's wrong, but I think it indicates the financial stress that's going on right now. It says Americans are preparing for a costlier holiday season as inflation continues to rise at historic rates. A new survey by Personal Capital reveals that 1 in 4 Americans plan to skip Thanksgiving this year to save money, and 42% plan to ask guests to contribute cash to help cover costs. While the majority of Americans, 68%, said they still plan to celebrate the holiday, they are also experiencing anxiety over the soaring expenses associated with the occasion. More than half of Gen Z, 54%, and millennials, 51%, say they are financially stressed by Thanksgiving this year, slightly above the general population, 45%, who also feel the burn. Nearly all respondents said they will be keeping gatherings small, making fewer dishes, or asking guests to bring something to keep the table costs down. So, guys, this shows again the stress of this inflationary time we're living in. And again, this ties back in with Saudi Arabia and the BRICS nations. Again, these nations, they recognize that the value of the US dollar, along with all of the fiat currencies in the world, is not a store of value. And people are realizing this for themselves. They've worked hard, they received this currency in exchange, and now it won't buy what it used to buy. And so they're feeling stressed. So these other nations are feeling that too. And it's why they're reaching out to the BRICS nations, because if the BRICS nations create a currency backed by something real that's exchangeable for something real, such as natural gas or coal or oil, gold, silver, whatever it may be that has a store of value, they're going to want to get on that bandwagon. And what does that mean for the Western financial system? What does that mean for the world going forward? And what does it mean if the United States is threatened with losing that monetary status, that world reserve currency status? How far does it mean they're willing to go in the war in Ukraine in order to stop that from happening? So there's a lot of implications involved here and what all this means for the world going forward. So, guys, I know this sounds like bad news, but again, while the world gives us bad news, we know the good news, and the good news is Jesus is coming back. The good news is that while we were sinners, Jesus died on the cross. His blood was given as payment for our sins so that we may be seen righteous and we may live in an eternal life with him. So he rose again. Guys, that's the good news. Jesus is alive and Jesus is coming back. So keep that as your focus and as your joy in these times ahead. As we read this, all these things are indications Jesus is coming back. So we need to look at that as good news. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. Make sure to like and share this. God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.